life. Welcome, Terry.
Hello, Karen. Thanks for inviting me along. I've been very excited to do this all week. I've been really nervous, so I don't know if you have that effect on people, but I'm just so excited.
I don't know if I have that effect on people, but I've been excited to talk to you too, because you are just, we're going to get to your water thing. Oh my God. Yeah, I love what you're doing. I want to talk about the rest of your stuff first, but, I've just, ever since I've met you, we've had some great conversations about giving back and about loving the world and, and caring about the planet and how we can do that in a business sense, and a lot of us are, unfortunately, like me, I don't have a great business brain, but I'm all forgiving. And sometimes we get a little bit, I think in the past, it's been very much, you're either a philanthropic sort of giver, or you're a business person. And it's good when they can actually both come together, because us givers actually need to put food on the table. So we might actually learn something from you. I think it's fantastic.
You mean you want to eat occasionally?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, it's a good strategy.
Yeah, and you just speaking of success, you're massively successful in the business arena. And in the intro I said a few things that you were that you'd founded, that you're incredible. You just see opportunity and you just grab at it, and I absolutely admire that. And I'm kind of envious of it, because I'm just too slow off the mark with that sort of stuff. And you and I were just talking, we should have both got shares in Zoom, and by God, we would have been out on a beach somewhere by now. But all this great stuff that you're doing, and your incredible business mind, to turn stuff into, well, food on your table, but also food for good, like all this success, were you born into success? Did you come from a silver spoon family, or how did it start?
Definitely not. Quite at the other end of the spectrum, Karen. And thanks for your good words. Very generous. I don't know if it's all true, but we'll take it when we can get it. But no, quite the opposite. I'm definitely born into a migrant working class family. In fact, one of the original Wog boys off the boat. Mum and Dad arrived. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with a 6-year-old, and I was 8 months old when they arrived in 1962, long time ago, followed on from my uncle who came out in the 50s. So really born into a working class family, grew up in Richmond and had a great upbringing. What kids really want. Get out in the morning, particularly during the holidays. Those holidays seemed a lot longer at Christmas than they do these days for some reason. But there was only one rule: just be back before dark. And that you could get up to all sorts of stuff with your mates, riding your bike and doing things I'm not going to own up to on a recorded show, but so definitely understood what it takes to earn a living. Mum and dad, factory workers, etc. And we were lucky enough to get an education. My brother and I, my older brother and I, there's only the two of us, and I think Gough Whitlam was the reason we managed to get through to a university degree and get a degree, and then the rest just happened. I'm not quite sure how, but it happened.
Some people say luck, and I reckon it's good management. Actually, it's about, isn't it about saying, I don't know. Tell me if this is true for you. That it's kind of like what you come from. You're determined that I'm not going to stay in that, and I don't need to stay in that. I'm going to make a better life, even though you're talking about fantastic things, riding your bike, and I did that too, and it was a great life. But there's always a struggle, and
Yeah, but it boils down to my mum passed away. She was a very generous lady. She passed away of cancer about 5 years ago, and I think the answer to what you've just said really got summed up by my brother at her funeral. I mean, we just, it was a small group of people, and he said that she in particular is a very, very giving person. There are givers and there are takers and there are matches in life. And she was just the ultimate giver. She was a feeder as well. She used to love to feed people. That was her passion. It was always about other people. It's amazing. And I just thought that was natural. And every mum did that. And I guess a lot of them do, but not all of them. And the words that my brother said were that, she gave us a good moral, and dad too, gave us a good moral compass. and being able to understand the difference between good decisions and bad decisions. I think that's at the essence of what has probably driven us. Sure, you get up in the morning and you want to be the best version of yourself and go off and do things, big things. And we are an ambitious little clan. The Paules are a very, very small clan. There's not many of us around, so we know everyone there. So that's probably at the guts of it. We didn't really sit around the table like I probably do with my children, who are now, my daughter's 30, so we're at a different stage in our lives. But we do talk about things about building businesses or wealth and transferring that and what it means, and reputation, family name. It's not just you when you make decisions in the world. It's all the people with the same common name that get dragged into it, and you see it in the press all the time where someone makes a bad decision and the whole family suffers for it, and all the dynamics around that. So when I was growing up, it was really about being a good person. There's a Greek, and I'm from Greek background. There's a Greek saying or term called philotimo, which doesn't actually have an English translation. It actually means respect and honor. It's around, and the Greeks will use it in a way when you do something that's cheap or nasty or bad, they'll say, don't you have any philotimo? Don't you have any kindness? And I know that's a big word for you, kindness to other people and the reputation of your family. So that's really what got discussed, other than the footy and how do you make a living around when I was growing up. And maybe that's part of the reason that we have had a level of success. Whatever you define success, we don't define it in money. We define it in reputation and being a good person and in the spirit of my dear mother.
Yeah. I define success around character as well. I think that's a really important thing. Yeah, I love what you're saying. I reckon I kind of don't want to say it because I feel like I'm generalizing. I'm just throwing shit out there, but it does seem like a lot. Lately we've lost moral compasses. There seems to be kind of like, what's in it for me and what's in it for me right now, that kind of thing. And if I'm impacting someone else too bad, and I know I'm overgeneralizing, but you just don't see as much of that wholesomeness anymore. Do you?
Yeah, it's a good old-fashioned way, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a mindset. Look, it does exist. I think generally I'm an optimist, and I like to see good things in people wherever possible. It's not always the case. Maybe technology and the intimacy or the immediacy of, we all know we're all so connected, which is wonderful because you can be sitting anywhere in the world and be connected to whoever you want to be. But sometimes it works against you in this aspect, and people have a self-image on Instagram and it's fake. It's not the real them, and they put themselves under pressure. They put themselves out to the world and then feel bad about themselves. They focus on things they can't control. One of the secrets to success, and I know Ben Crow, who's been in the media a fair bit, is a friend of mine, with Ash Barty and my illustrious Richmond Football Club growing up in Tigerland. He talks about focusing on the things you can control, and you do, and shutting out all the noise of what other people think, and just being yourself, being relaxed enough, being comfortable with being yourself. It doesn't mean you can't improve. It just means start with that basis, get comfortable with yourself, focus on the things that you can control, and somehow all these other things start to happen. Whereas if the more you focus on outside of your control, the more you shrink, the more you go backwards, you lose momentum, you lose confidence, and then you have a very unhappy life potentially.
It's really fits quite well with the law of attraction, doesn't it? The more whatever you focus on grows, and it's
And the more you give, Karen, the more you get. Let me tell you.
Yes.
I so, people say it's amazing how you were lucky enough to do that, and all of those lucky moments. But if you go into a relationship expecting to get something, as I mentioned earlier, and there's a book, I can't remember who wrote it, but called Givers, Takers, and Matchers. People that match. But I think it's an advantage to go into any relationship, personal and commercial, business, whatever, with a mentality around giving. So give for the right reasons. Don't give stupidly, but give for the right reasons, and not expect anything. And the expectation, the result of what comes back, may not come back in your lifetime. It could be to your children or to something else that you believe in. Somebody can approach your kids in 50 years' time and say, your old man helped me do whatever, or my dad or something. I want to give something back, and so on and so on. So there is an element of karma there, this mind, body, soul that I know you and I have discussed about in the past.
Well, I 100% agree with all of that. I absolutely love it. And tell us about the mind, body, soul, because I think that I know that that's something that's really important to you, and that you try to weave that into business wherever you can. So what's the story or message behind all that?
Yeah, look, it's something, and there's a lot of components to it, but if you dumb it down, it's really talking about those are the three essences of what controls our lives and how we go about living. So I remember coaching my daughter's under 13 netball team. This is how crazy you can get with this stuff. And you're teaching them how to throw and do and whatever, and really bunch of good kids, right? And we'd sit down before a game and talk about mind, body, soul. And I'm sure other parents would be saying, this guy's a bit kooky, right? He should be teaching them how to throw the ball or win. And it's not about winning in particular at that age. And what we talk about is that there are three elements to success in life. And mind is around being the best version of yourself, being smart, being committed, all of those things, understanding. Body's around ability. And some of that is stuff that you can work on through practice, through training, but often it's God-given. It's a capability. Some people can play the piano, other people can kick 60-meter goals, like Dusty Martin or God knows what. So understanding that, and then soul is around, I guess, is the most intangible. It's around spirit. It's around wanting something more than something else. So if you have two of those ingredients, you can have quite a successful life. So if you're a smart person and have good mindset and want something, but maybe are lacking in ability, you'll probably achieve most of your goals, and vice versa. But you'll find that elite people, not only sports people, but anyone that's elite in their chosen world, where they want to live, will have all three. They will have mind and mental strength and the smarts. They will have some God-given or earned capability, and they will want it more than anything else. And if you can apply those three things, those three principles, or at least two of those principles, if you only have one, well, it's better than having none. But it's less likely you will achieve the top end of whatever it is you set out to do.
I love that. And I love, it's easy to hear you talk and say this. And then when you talk about mind, you say, you've got to be smart. And it's very easy to interpret that as you saying, well, you have to have a high IQ, and you have to be, genius thinking, genius intelligence. But that's not what you're saying at all. And smart thinking
could be street smart. It could be street smart through, it could be a composition of education, experience, and training, or all of those, right? And as you get grumpy and old and grey like me, you probably have a few more of those. You put your hand there, you try to tell kids. I remember our kids, we'd use the term hot. Even if it wasn't something that was hot, it was the best that we could come up with to tell them to not put their hand there because the door's going to shut or whatever. I guess you have to have those moments where you do touch the hot and say, oh shit, that guy wasn't choking. Look at my hand. And ouch, it really, really hurts. So life tends to beat you up a little bit, and the smarter people sort of learn how to work their way through that. That's what I'm talking about, being smart.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I think that I love what you're saying in that those three ingredients are accessible to anybody who actually wants to gain them, in whether it's God-given or whether it's earned. You can they're accessible. So
absolutely. I mean, we can only get half a dozen players in my netball team, but if we had more in that netball team, there would have been more people focusing on mind, body, soul. You know, some of these kids now have all gone on to be doctors and specialists and have started careers. And I just wonder, it'd be great to catch up with them at a point in time and just sort of see if any of that, albeit modest contribution, I'm sure their parents did a hell of a lot more than I did for them, but you wonder if any of that actually sunk in over a number of years, that you had an opportunity to mentor effectively, do some mentoring there.
And also the interesting thing about that is that a lot of times we have these moments with people, and sometimes people will say, oh, I'll never forget that time you said such and such, it changed my life. But there's also other points where it goes in subconsciously. We don't even know that that was a moment that was a defining thing for us. You know, we might feel something, but we can't actually remember that it was a turning point. So it would be interesting to catch up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I want to ask you about your Myco. You know, you were the founder of Myco, and a lot of, I remember this coming out. It's the plant-based cheese, and you know, it was I was heavily into veganism then, and couldn't find cheese anywhere. And I remember it coming out, and it was like, finally, there's something that we can eat. But tell us more. Like it's Myco is not just the cheese, like there's a whole lot of other stuff to it, and it's got a health and well-being sort of back. That's what you're interested in, but your big focus is on plant-based food and beverages. What got you into that? Coming from a Greek background, you would have had lots of roast lamb and stuff like that. So
yeah, look, that's a cliche. The Greeks actually don't eat that much lamb, but it's great. I mean, it's sort of become a story. But Myco is really a vehicle that really allows me to practice mind, body, and soul in a commercial aspect. I mean, there's a charitable component to it too, which we could talk about a little bit later. But effectively, it was inspired by a poem. So if you visit our Myco website, you'll see that it's a really simple website. It talks about mind, body, soul being the best version of yourself, all the stuff that we've just talked about. And then it publishes Max Irwin's poem Desiderata, which some people would know through the song, sort of a bit flower power in the 60s and 70s. But that poem goes back to 1927, and it really is a beautiful way to talk about mind, body, soul, and being in peace with yourself, and understanding there are vexatious and noisy people, and understanding to be kind to yourself as you grow old, and understanding that you have a right to be here in the universe like anything else. So without getting too kumbaya about it, I thought when I read it and really reread it many times, that it was a really nice way to sort of encapsulate the mind, body, soul. And Myco is really it's a vehicle. It's a way that we solve problems, I guess. And you've actually said exactly what we set out to do, that you had a problem being a vegan and not having easy or convenient access to sustainable and dairy-free or animal-free cheese in this instance. And we came along and built a product and put it on a shelf through Coles and Woolies on a national basis, and gave it to you at a price point that made sense, and in one essence made you part of the broader community. Because often vegans, if you go back sort of 7, 8, 10 years ago, were really struggling. They're quite polarizing, can be polarizing, only because they're so passionate about the ethical and moral side of the thing, but may have felt dislocated in the sense that you'd have to go a long way to just buy basic things that everyone else could go to their fridge or pantry and find. So that was the birth of our biocheese product. Plant-based foods have interested me since about 2012. I was a flexitarian, and now I'm not a vegan, but I'm pretty close to one. I still eat some dairy product, but my diet is plant-based and has been for some years. It's not necessarily just because of the moral or ethical animal side of it. It's actually three consumers, I call them, that have morphed into one. So there are people that are interested in their health and well-being. They're changing the way they eat. They're doing Meatless Monday. They're dialing down certain parts of their diet. And my Greek background actually tucks quite nicely into that, because the Greek Mediterranean diet is known to be as a healthy diet. So it was sort of a predecessor to plant-based, where extra virgin olive oil and sort of low-fat feta cheeses and a lot of beans and sprouts and vegetables make up the majority. Lamb is only consumed as a sort of a special occasion around parts of the year, and so it's a little bit of a myth that Greeks just sit there eating lamb all the time. Maybe in Australia they do, but certainly back in Greece they probably don't as much. So the second consumer is, I call, the middle person, who's really interested in the planet and the well-being of the planet and understands the dynamics around that. And then the third person is the vegan, is saying, look, it's great to worry about yourself. It's great to worry about the planet, but what about all of God's creatures as well? So they're all one person now, and we're seeing it manifest in this term called sustainability. And it's moving in the right direction. Whether we're going to do it all in time, and we have got a lot of problems in the world. The world is warming. It is affecting our food bowl and our food chain. Water scarcity and contamination is the next big thing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. It is life-giving. Without water, we see a lot of water events, but it's raining in the wrong places. We're seeing floods, which are catastrophic. We're seeing droughts in places like California and even in Australia and other parts of the world. So the world's not necessarily in a good place at the moment, but if we can get more and more people just changing little things in the way they consume and they go about their lives, because that's the biggest question that I get. I can't make a change. I'm only one person. How am I going to do it? But people don't understand, if they change one thing or maybe two things in what they do in an entire week, the compounding effect across 7 billion people is huge. It will move the dial. It will help the planet. It will make a difference.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I sit within all three of those things. But particularly, and more so than my own health, and I should probably focus on that more, but more so about the planet, and the animals. And I just, I don't know. Sometimes I get into despair, and then I'm also an optimist as well, because I always believe that we can do it, and I do believe we can hit a tipping point, and I often wonder whether I'll still be here to see it. And even if I'm not, I don't care. I just would like us to hit a tipping point where we realize the interconnectedness of everything here and all our energy. And it doesn't take much, as you say. It's like kicking a bucket of water, just that tiny little nudge, and the whole thing sort of spills.
Splashes, yeah. And look, a pandemic like COVID is really, if you can take any positives out of that, I mean, it's not something, it's the proverbial 100-year event, but the pandemic's also shown how interconnected we are, how close we are. I mean, it's shown that governments and bureaucrats are actually no good at solving big world problems. The politicians are in it for very short periods of time. They're not all bad. I'm not saying. Sometimes they're so frustrated, I'm sure, in their own world of what they can contribute. The bureaucrats have been there a long time, and the armory's not really built to be able to solve those problems. So then we take global warming and greenhouse and water scarcity and PFAS and forever chemicals and all the problems that the world has, and we ask the same set of people to solve that for us. And it's unrealistic to expect that. The solution actually needs to be from us as individuals to make meaningful changes, albeit, one or two, but substantial changes to what we do. It's not an insurmountable task to do that, but the effect compounding through will be huge. But we tend to be very selfish, getting back to our giving. You find, the pandemic's another good example. You see the developed world, the Western world, huge vaccination rates, close, Fortress Australia, bunker up. It's somebody else's problem. And I call that a clean fish in a dirty pond. That's the approach they've taken. They're saying, she'll be right, I'm good. But if you have a look at what's disturbed the world with the Delta variant and the Omicron variant, it's come out of the developing world. We haven't fixed their problems. So the variations to the virus have come out of that world because they haven't had access to vaccines. They haven't been looked after from a global perspective. So here we are bunkered up again. because we didn't help solve everyone's problem. You can't be a clean fish in a dirty pond.
I love that analogy. That's so good. And and we're not better than anyone else. And there's often it's a kind of a thing where there's two parts. There's one is thinking that we're better than the developing countries, and kind of like it's almost a token gesture at times. We'll just help them out and it just looks good on our spreadsheet and that kind of stuff. And the other part to that is taking care of myself, and another part to that interconnectedness that people just don't get. When you take care of yourself, you're actually harming yourself, because you're not putting solutions into the environment around you that is going to impact back on you. So, but speaking exactly what you're saying, you said a key point here, which leads so well into the water thing, is that you can't rely on the governments. You can't rely on all these big whoever conglomerates and God knows what. It's individuals that have to start making choices and start making decisions and say, do you know what? I think I can help. And with Get Off the Bench, I'm always saying to people, you never know, like your little thing that you're perceiving as little might be the trigger that if it doesn't work for you, it might inspire somebody else to make the next big thing. But so we should all try. If it was something we want to do, just give it a crack. But you gave it a crack, and I want to hear about it. Tell us about Botanical Water. It's just...
Yeah, look, it's a huge idea, and we're a little bit crazy and have got a reasonable track record of building things from a garage in a startup. I mean, we've got a successful financial services company that my brother and I call Findex. We started in 1987 around my dining room table, and we've now built effectively $1 billion company that employs 3,000 people across 2 countries, Australia and New Zealand. And then we went on and built another business called Lemnos, which is a Mediterranean lifestyle dairy business, which grew to be quite a large business, which we sold about 10 or so years ago, and then started to talk about biocheese, which we talked about a little bit earlier. So you start to build a bit of a repertoire, a way of, and people see business, and particularly big business, as a dirty word, and I can understand that, right? Because generally capitalism is really around shareholders. You see, our job is to make shareholders a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. That mentality is actually very, very wrong. We like to call it, our family office calls it sustainable capitalism, where we shift away from thinking about shareholders to thinking about stakeholders, all the stakeholders, the customers, the employees, the broader community, all of the bits that we've just been talking about. So if you go into work every day and take a stakeholder mentality where everyone can win, it doesn't need to be we win, they lose. That's the wrong way to approach it. You can actually take the good parts of capitalism, survival of the fittest, building big things, making money. It's not a dirty word to make money, because it makes people get up the next day to do it again, right? If there's nothing in it for people in their own world, then they may not want to get up the next day and go and do it again. So it's not a bad thing to embed that in a day-to-day activity. So Botanical Water has, in the broader sense, Aqua Botanical. Actually, I've got some here I'm drinking. I drink it every day. There it is, available at Coles and online if you Google Aqua Botanical. So this water recently was living in a plant, was living in a carrot, was living in tomato, was living in sugarcane here in Australia.
Wow.
So I met a guy by the name of Dr. Bruce who was making water from carrots up in Mildura. So that intrigued me. So I hopped on a plane, went and met Bruce. We spent a day together and talked about a whole bunch of stuff. And then we were crazy enough in 2017 to invest in the invention. So this was a really novel invention, which basically said you have rainwater, you catch it, you drink it. So, it could be in a river, surface water. Then you have aquifer water, water that lives below the ground, mineral water, et cetera, and you can drill down and create a bore or well and catch and drink that. But no one up until this point had really thought that plants, all plants, fruit and vegetables, are effectively 95% water. So if we could find a way to harvest the water that naturally occurs in plants, we've actually found a new source of water. And this water may be more predictable, unlike rainwater, where we don't really know if it's going to rain. We do know where plants are harvested and grown. So what we do is we don't grow fruit and vegetables to take the water out of it. What we do is we attach our technology and our equipment, our machinery, our water harvesting unit to existing industries. And those industries are industries like people that make sugar from sugarcane, people that make things like tomato ketchup or tomato sauce or juice or fruit concentrates that are used as ingredients, and people that make alcohol, distilleries. Now, what those three industries have in common is they all use a large evaporative process to concentrate the fruit or vegetable down, to concentrate it. So they're effectively evaporating out the water. And there's thousands of these factories all over the world in some of the most water scarce or contaminated countries in the world. And what happens at the moment, that evaporative condensate literally goes out the back of the factory, often piping hot, like kettle hot, into a river or to environmental detriment. And what we do is we cleverly catch that evaporative condensate. We run it through a purification process in our equipment. And then we create the world's most sustainable water, clean, environmentally green, and safe water. And we've worked out that there's about 3 trillion litres of this water that gets thrown away around the world at the moment. And that's like, 1.2 million Olympic-sized swimming pools worth every year. And in places like India, where water scarcity is huge, I mean, something like 1.5 million children a year die in India from water-related and sanitation-related diseases. So India is a good example. There are 525 sugar mills in India. Each one of these sugar mills, literally, like today, will throw away around 2 million litres of our water straight out the back of the factory into a river, to piping hot to environmental detriment. So we can now catch every day 2 million. Each factory will throw away 2 million litres a day. So these are quite big factories, right? They're not. So we're able to now, through our innovation and our process, catch that water and convert it into a product at the small end, but at the other end, we're able to use it as an ingredient, and we're able to gift it into the local communities. So girls predominantly carry the burden of walking long distances in some of these communities to fetch water. You know, they can often come to harm. They can be raped. They can be, it's not they're walking 3-4 hours a day, which means they're not going to school. So if these kids aren't going to school and getting an education, and it's coming from a WOG boy, remember, that had my opportunity because my parents are crazy enough to hop on a boat and come to the other side of the world. We want to, through our Botanical Water Foundation, gift this same water that I'm drinking, looks exactly like that, crystal clear water, to the world's poorest people. And get some of the world's biggest companies to pay for it through this business that we're building, our botanical water business.
Wow, I love that. So is that, then you're talking about gifting it? Is that, I know you have started up the Botanical Water Foundation, or the Aqua. Tell me what it's exactly called.
Well, the foundation, the retail product, the one that's you can buy in a supermarket or online, is called Aqua Botanical. So that's a brand name. The water itself is called Botanical Water. And our business is called Botanical Water Technologies. And then sitting to one side separately is the Botanical Water Foundation. And the way we're doing it is the technologies business will create and trade in this water on a new exchange that we're building. We've partnered up with Fujitsu, a global player, to build a blockchain botanical water exchange. So we're putting it on a platform where, a bit like Uber. So if you can imagine somebody like a sugar mill that wasn't in the water business, that may be selling sugar to Coca-Cola, can now sell water to Coca-Cola or to a beverage company or to a beer company. So they're like the Uber driver. And at the other end, there are beverage companies and varying people, municipalities and charities, all looking for water to do what they do on the other side of the equation. So they'll come to the exchange as the passenger. And our Botanical Water Exchange will connect the two. We'll transact a water transaction, which will say, look, I want to buy 100 million litres of water. Fine. Trade, a bit like on Uber. You get to a destination. And what we're doing in there is we're taxing that transaction 1%.
Yeah.
And filling a virtual silo of water in our foundation.
Yeah.
And then we'll knock on the door to people like, UNICEF or Matt Damon, the actors, water.org or Charity Water, and say, look, hey guys, I've got 100 million litres of water that I want to give to you because you've got the infrastructure, you've got all the relationships, you've got all the things that are needed. We're going to give this to you to give to people in your ecosystem, in your community. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We'll partner with these organisations that have been predominantly at the moment, they dig wells and they create local water sources that way.
Yeah.
We've found a new factory up the road, literally, because think about it, the people that work in the factory live in the village.
Yeah.
And their kids, they're making sugar, for example, but their kids are walking 3 and 4 hours in the morning to go and fetch water. Imagine if that factory that mum and dad work in can also ship a tanker of water down into the middle of town in the morning. Everyone goes out there, gets their water for the day, and it's clean. It's as good as what I'm drinking. And the kids can go to school, and they don't get sick, and they don't die.
Wow, I just love it.
This is not theoretical, Karen. This is happening. This is real. This is we've got some of the biggest brands in the world partnering up at the moment, and a few more to come by the end of the year. This started literally on a farm in Mildura, and is now sort of in that middle stages. And we've got people like Fujitsu who are bought in all the way to CEO level, that love the sustainability and the philanthropic story here, and are really been very, very generous. They're a wonderful company. I mean, most people know the Amazons and the Microsofts and that, but Fujitsu are a $35 billion turnover business, right? And they love to build technology like the other tech companies, but build it for real world problem solving. And if you think of Myco, that's what we do. We started there thinking before we like to problem solve. So there's been a real meeting of the minds with them in helping us build our exchange. And all of their relationships as well will also be will come to the party eventually. It's a big idea. So if you're listening to this and thinking that guy's crazy, I don't know what he's talking about, you wouldn't be the first person. But it takes people, I've got a T-shirt that Ben gave me, and it's his motto, and it says "Embrace your weird." And I wear that. I wear that to the gym often, and it sort of sets a bit of a mindset that you got to be a bit crazy to do some of this stuff.
You do, but it's again accessible to all of us, because we all have ideas. We all have things going on in our mind with kind of like, I wonder what if I could get water out there, or what if I could, do this, or what if I could do that. But we don't do it because we don't take the risk, or because we think, it's too big. And when you think about your idea, it was one crazy farmer, in Mildura, thinking, look at this great idea. I can get water out of my carrots. And that could have just stayed on his farm forever, because he might not have had the knowledge or the know-how. How do I ever progress this? But I think this is where it comes into, let's talk about what we're doing. Let's talk about our ideas, because somebody will hear about it and somebody will say, I want to help you with that. I want to come on board with that, or I want to expand.
That's exactly how this happened. That I mean, a lot of people that I see, I do a lot of mentoring as well. And particularly of younger people. People sort of ask me, why do you mentor Gen Zs and that? Why are you doing all of that? And I see it as a bit of reverse mentoring as well. That I learn a hell of a lot more out of them. I love the Gen Z generation. I just think, I reckon they're good. The millennials, my kids are millennials or on the cusp there, and they're a different breed. But you're right. Being able to take an idea through a commercialization and then a corporatization process takes a lot of experience. I always say when I talk to startups, a good idea is not enough. I mean, the first thing I'll say, tell me about your idea. What's different about it? It's the best cheese, or it's the whatever the best. It tends to be very product or service driven, the invention, which is great because they're really passionate about it. But then I start to ask them beyond that. I mean, a good idea is never enough. It's better than starting with a bad idea, right? If we're going to commercialize something, let's not have a crap idea. Let's have something worth doing. But then there's a whole series of things that have to happen to take that idea from a great idea to something that can change the world. And there are things that change the world from time to time. Technology, sustainability is something that's changing the world. We can't see it, but I'm old enough to remember pre-digital.
Yeah.
I remember when digital wasn't a thing, right? We were posting envelopes and letters. There was a typing pool at work. You had a dictaphone and that was about as good as the technology. Then all of a sudden, mobile phones, and then fax machines, and then somebody said, "Oh, there's this new fancy thing called a computer." So we bought one of those. In the mid 80s, and then somebody said, we can connect them all up so we can network them. Oh, that's good. So we networked their office, and then somebody came along and said, there's this other thing that the Americans have developed called the internet. Oh, I don't reckon that'll work. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So we started to connect other people and other offices. We're connected that way as we speak. And then somebody came along and said, oh, there's this thing called Wi-Fi and 5G, and now satellite. And now Meta, Mark is developing Meta and virtual people and the rest of it. That's taken 30 years.
Yeah.
Where we are at the moment is this term called sustainability. It's the new digital. It's saying that all the things that we've been talking about in our chat are all coming together, and sustainable capitalism is part of that, where we're changing the world again for the next 20 or 30 years. So if we can embed these practices that we've been talking about around sustainability into our everyday lives, everyone, all the stakeholders, that word again, will be better off. If you didn't embrace digital, I had people around me in the early 80s that said, nah, computers, I'm not going to do that, stuff that. I mean, how many of them are they going to sell? Who's going to buy a computer? They're $5,000 in those, 5,000 real dollars in those days.
Yeah, I know. Remember,
I bought. It cost me $5,000. I went and got a 3-year loan down at the bank to be able to pay it off in installments, like a car. It was worth more. My first car cost me $3,000. My first computer cost me $5,000. So there you go. But imagine now if we were in total denial and said we're not going to get onto that. So that's what's happening now with sustainable practices. Corporations are taking it seriously. The Fortune 500 companies are all producing ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance statements. They're going to their shareholders, to their employees, and saying, we need to be better. We need to be smarter. We need to save the environment. We need to make your working life better. We need to equality. We need to have less discrimination. We need, LGBT, all of that is all under this mass umbrella called sustainability. And the quicker we get onto that, the better the world will be.
Yeah. There is still some resistance, still some outdated bloody CEOs that should be shoved on.
It's going to take time, Karen. They're going to have to wash out of the system.
Yeah.
And the Gen Zs and the millennials and others will inherit the earth.
Yeah.
And hopefully do it a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love all this stuff. And, I want to quote, and it's by the way, won heaps of awards too. So, this is the real thing. And I love that you're saying, I love and I don't love. No, I do love that you're saying, a great idea is not enough, because you have to corporatize it and you have to really build the whole thing till it. But in there, you also said, save the world. And so I think the thing I want to also point out is that to have a great idea, you don't have to save the world. I think because not everyone's going to come up with, your great big botanical water process. But I do think that we've got to have a mindset that when we do have an idea, we can expand it. And if it's helping the world move forward, even if you're only doing a tiny step to help the world move forward, it's still fantastic. Because when you talked about at the very start, if we all only change one or two little things, and as a collective, we start to build this compounding effect. It's going to be better. So I just want to throw the spanner in the works a bit. I just don't want people giving up on ideas if they're not going to be great big world changing ideas. But we just got to be better. We just got to help. Just got to contribute.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I know what you're saying. You're saying not every idea has to absolutely change the world. It can just take friction out of people's lives, I like to call it. Just make it easier, or make it safer, or make it, entertain us, or whatever the vertical that you're operating in, whatever the invention is, whether you're in entertainment or health or aged care or whatever. So if we can add value to people's lives, and I don't want it to be thought that the biggest risk that we have is what I like to call execution risk, right? A good idea, you got a pathway, you build a business plan, but being able to actually not stuff it up along the way is your biggest risk, your execution risk. So we should always encourage people to live their dream and chase all that and get off the bench and put one foot in front of the other. I've watched some of your other shows, and but I think, and if I'm not sure if you're asking me what the get off the bench question is, but the one that I reckon is one that gets missed a lot. Everyone sort of says, make a start, be gradual, be caring, be loving, be realistic. But I always say the biggest secret, if somebody said to me, what would be the one thing that knowing now what you know, would you do? I'd go and get a mentor. I'd go and get a mentor that would help me get off the bench and guide me in a particular way. And because often we surround ourselves with our loved ones and our friends, and we ask them about our ideas and our passage. And what are they going to say? Of course, they don't want to hurt us. They want to support us, their family and friends. But often the right mentor, somebody that, and I'm not even talking about necessarily business, just life skilling, somebody that you can trust, that you respect, has to have an element of respect there, can be worth their weight in gold to help us get off the bench and do what we, have a happier life, so to speak.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that question, and you read my mind.
And I've preempted it.
I was going to ask you what's the number one thing.
That's the one. Yeah. Get a good mentor. It's cheap as chips to do, and it'll reward you for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well, Terry, I bloody love this. I just love what you're doing, and and like I said, not everyone has to change the world in such a big way, but too often we think we can't change the world in a big way. That's too big. I don't know how that can ever happen, but you've just proven that big things that are truly life-saving can happen, if you connect the right dots, and the right dots are out there to be connected. It's just a matter of, I reckon, keep talking, keep sharing, keep working on it, because eventually these dots will come together. And I just love the image in my head about you when you're talking about water that I love the most is when you're saying about the kids in India that are living in the village and going to fetch water, and their mum and dad are working in the factory, and all that water is going into the river. Why not put that water in the truck?
It's crazy. There's a total dislocation, right? It takes somebody to come along and go, this is madness. It's like a Monty Python movie, this can't be happening. But it's serious, Karen. This is like water scarcity and contamination are probably more serious than carbon and global warming. They're all related, of course. They're all all tied together. But you can go without food for 30 days. You can't go without water for 30 days. You'll die.
No.
So you've got this really crazy situation that I think we're not going to solve it, but we can certainly make a meaningful impact.
Oh, and that's all you can do. Nobody can save everything in the world. We just can't. But if we're making a change and making a dent, that's the good thing. When you're talking about, I just want to quote you, one of your quotes. When you're talking about people dying from water, it's estimated that a child under 5 years old dies listen to this, guys. I'm going to say it again because it's so powerful. It is estimated that a child under 5 years old dies every 90 seconds because of the access to clean water and sanitation. if you can't,
that's a United Nations quote, right? That's come out of off theirs. And when I read that, I did exactly what you just did. I read it several times, and I thought, 90 seconds. Can you imagine? I mean, that's just devastating. If we really, really, I get emotional even thinking about it. And it doesn't have to be, Karen. It doesn't have to be.
I don't know how many 90 seconds we've been talking for nearly an hour, and I don't know how many 90 seconds have passed in there. I suppose, I don't even know, 60 minutes. It's probably, 40, 45 maybe.
45, yeah.
Yeah. Kids have died while we've
That's
been.
a classroom. That's 2 classrooms probably in Australia. Can you imagine that? Anyway, that's it is devastating, but it can change, and we will make a change. We will make a contribution, and my dear old mum will be really rapt.
And I was just thinking too, when you just to finish on a high like this, is that 45 kids have just died while we've been having, and it sounds morbid and it sounds awful, but if as human beings and if as caring people and truly stepping into our human side and humanity, if we were to make that 1 or 2 changes in our lives, that's an opportunity to save those 45 kids, and it's not much to ask. It's absolutely not much to ask to do something.
Absolutely. It's a change of mindset. It's that clean fish in a dirty pond, somebody else's problem. The government will fix it. That's the kiss of death. No disrespect to our governments and politicians, but if that's plan A, it's not going to end well.
No. Anyway, so guys, see how easy it is to make a difference. You don't have to be putting water back in Indian villages or anywhere else in the world, but you can just 1 or 2 little small things can make a massive difference. Terry, thank you. Now, people are going to want to follow you and get what they want to go and have. I'm going to put all your links in the show notes anyway, but where can people find you?
Well, you can do terrypaule.com or on my LinkedIn, just under Terry Paule with an E, Paule, and I'm sure you'll find me.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'll put all the other links to everything Myco so that people can read that wonderful poem and,
Yeah, Desiderata, it is fabulous. I'll guarantee if you take the 3 or 4 minutes time to read it, it can be life-changing. One of the best poems ever written.
I agree. I sat there and read it and thought, wow, this is so real, so good, but so simple. So simple, but so good. Yeah.
It is. Thank you.
Well, Terry, thank you very much. This has been absolutely enlightening and absolutely inspiring, but also there's such a chunk of hope in everything that we've talked about. So I've loved it. Thank you for joining me.
And Karen, thank you for the invitation. And I was excited, and I'm still excited. So fabulous work that you do, and I love your show as well.
Oh, thank you. And I know you're not just saying that, and I wasn't.
No, I'm not. You have an infectious sort of personality and an infectious voice. Perfectly good for doing what you do. I mean, you're born to do this.
Thank you. Is it so you're saying like too ugly for television? Is that...
A good radio. What is it? A good head for radio. Yeah. No, I didn't. Oh no, I didn't say that.
That's fine.
No, fabulous, Karen. Thank you. And thanks for inviting me again.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. And we'll catch up again soon. I can't wait. Thanks heaps, Terry. See ya.